Listen, my people. Gather round, because the story I'm about to tell you will make you check yourself twice before you open your mouth to mock another person. This is the story of Chioma and the compound full of women who thought they were doing something. But you see, when God decides to teach a lesson, He doesn't send a text message first, though. Chioma lived in a large compound in the village with 7 other families. Her husband, Emeka, was not a rich man. In fact, the man was barely managing. He worked as a night guard at the local school, and the money he brought home every month could not even buy 2 bags of rice without serious calculation. Chioma would sit on her veranda every evening, mending their old clothes with her sewing needle, stretching every kobo her husband gave her until it screamed for mercy. But you see, Chioma had one thing that made all the difference. She had respect for her husband. She never complained outside that compound. She never joined the evening gossip sessions where wives would tear their husbands to shreds like dry stockfish. No. When Emeka came home tired from his night shift, smelling of mosquito coil and sweat, Chioma would warm his food, massage his shoulders, and thank him for his hard work. The other women in the compound, they would laugh at her through their windows. Chioma the sufferer, that was what they called her. Chioma who is managing night guard husband. They would cackle like witches during their evening meetings under the big mango tree. These women, let me tell you about them all. There was Ngozi, whose husband worked at the bank. She carried herself like the Queen of England's cousin. There was Patience, whose husband owned 3 buses. That one would not even greet Chioma properly anymore. There was Blessing, whose husband was a contractor. She would turn her nose away when Chioma passed as if poverty was a disease that could jump from one person to another. And there was Amarachi, Ifeoma, Adaeze, and Nkechi. All of them married to men who were doing well, and all of them looking down on Chioma like she was dirt under their expensive slippers. One Saturday evening, Chioma was returning from the market with her small bag of foodstuff. She had managed to buy beans and garri for the week, and she was walking with her head held high, despite her faded wrapper and worn slippers. The 7 women were sitting under the mango tree. You know that spot where they gathered every evening to drink their trophy wine and tear people apart with their sharp tongues. Chioma, Ngozi called out, her voice dripping with fake concern. She snapped her fingers in the air like she was summoning a house help. Come and join us now, or are you too busy planning your next big purchase? The other women burst into laughter so loud that even the neighbor's goat looked up in confusion. Ngozi slapped her thigh repeatedly, laughing until her expensive gele nearly fell off her head.
Chioma smiled and waved. Good evening, my sisters. I have to prepare food for my husband, though. He'll be hungry when he wakes up for his shift. Husband? Patience spat out the word like it was bitter leaf without washing. She stood up dramatically, her hands on her hips, her neck rolling like an agama lizard. Is that what we are calling him? The man who cannot even buy you a new wrapper for Christmas? My own husband bought me 6 Swiss lace just last week, oh. She twirled around to show off her expensive Ankara, the fabric making a swishing sound that filled the whole compound. The other women started their chorus, clapping their hands and stomping their feet. True talk, oh. That is what I'm saying. A man should be a man, oh. Blessing stood up, wine glass in hand, swaying like she had already finished the bottle by herself. She pointed her finger at Chioma like a prophetess pointing at a demon. Chioma, when will you wise up? When will you tell that your useless husband to go and find better work? You people are disgracing the entire compound. Every time people come visiting, they see you there mending clothes like it's 1950. She threw her head back and laughed, nearly spilling her wine on Amarachi, who had to jump back quickly. My own husband would die of shame. Amarachi jumped up from her seat, nearly knocking over the small table with drinks. Let me tell you something. She walked towards Chioma with exaggerated steps, her heels clicking on the cement ground. Even me, Seth, I cannot come and kill myself. If my husband was bringing home that kind of small money, I would pack my load and go back to my father's house. She snapped her fingers 3 times in Chioma's direction. Just like that. Ifeoma stood up now, fanning herself dramatically with her hand. Whoa, the thing is paining me on your behalf, oh. Look at how your wrapper is faded like old newspaper. Look at your slippers, then don't tear-reach your ankle. She covered her face with both hands and shook her head vigorously from side to side. Adeize couldn't contain herself. She jumped from her seat and started demonstrating, walking around in a mocking manner, slouching her shoulders and dragging her feet like a beggar. This is how Chioma walks to the market. The other women screamed with laughter, hitting each other's arms and wiping tears from their eyes. Nkechi, the last one to speak, stood up and raised her wine glass high in the air like she was making a toast. Let us drink to our husbands, the real men who know how to take care of their wives, not night guard who cannot even buy ordinary wrapper. She drained her glass in one long gulp and slammed it down on the table with a loud bang. Now, Chioma could have fired back. She could have reminded them that their marriages were not exactly heaven on earth. Ngozi's banker husband had a girlfriend in the next town. Everybody knew, except Ngozi, or maybe she knew and was pretending not to know. Patience's boss owner husband drank so much palm wine that he could barely remember his own children's names by evening. Contractor husband, that man was so busy contracting with young girls that Blessing had turned into a detective, checking his phone every night like she was working for DSS. But Chioma just smiled, that her gentle smile, and said quietly, "My husband is a good man. He works hard and he takes care of me. That is enough for me, oh." Enough? Amarachi grabbed her chest with both hands like someone having a heart attack and staggered backwards dramatically. "You hear what poverty is making people say? My dear, you need deliverance." She spun around in a circle, her hands raised to the sky. "Father Lord, come and deliver this woman from the spirit of managing." The 7 women laughed until tears ran down their faces. They laughed until their bellies hurt. They held each other and doubled over, slapping the table, stomping the ground, pointing at Chioma like she was the funniest comedy show in the world. And Chioma? She just continued walking to her small 2-room apartment, her head still high, her heart still peaceful, while their mocking laughter echoed through the entire compound. But you see, my people, there is something you should know. When you mock someone who is genuinely doing their best, when you laugh at someone who is managing their life with dignity and respect, you are playing with fire that you cannot see. Chioma went into her house, closed her door, knelt down beside her bed with her 2 knees properly on the ground, her hands clasped together, and she prayed. She didn't pray for revenge, oh. She didn't pray for their destruction. She simply prayed, "God, you know my heart. You know I have never wished them evil, despite how they treat me. I leave everything in your hands. Let your will be done." As she prayed, tears rolled down her cheeks and dropped on her clasped hands. That night, as Emeka was preparing for his shift, buttoning up his old security uniform carefully, something strange happened. There was a knock on their door. Pop, pop, pop. The old headmaster of the school came to their house. The man was retiring, and he had been watching Emeka for 5 years, watching how the man never slept on duty, how he protected that school like it was his own property, how he was honest even when money was left carelessly in offices. "Emeka," the old man said, placing his hand on Emeka's shoulder with the weight of someone passing on a blessing. "I have been trying to decide who to recommend for the new administrative position at the district education office. The pay is good, the work is during the day, and there is respect attached to it. I have decided. I am recommending you." Emeka's mouth fell open. His hand started shaking so much that he had to sit down on the bench. Chioma covered her mouth with both hands, her eyes filling with tears that began to pour down like rainfall. But that was just the beginning, oh. The next morning, Sunday morning, the compound woke up to the sound of loud wailing. "Ewo! Chukwu emewo! Ewo!"
Ngozi was in the middle of the compound, rolling on the ground, her rich, expensive wrapper covered in red sand, her hair scattered like a mad woman. Her husband, the banker, had been arrested on Friday evening for fraud. The bank had been investigating him for months, and finally they caught him red-handed with his hand in the cookie jar. He was in police cell, and Ngozi was running from pillar to post trying to find money for a lawyer. She tore at her clothes, pulled at her hair, and threw herself on the ground again and again while neighbors tried to hold her down. The women gathered under the mango tree, but this time they were not laughing. They huddled together, their voices no longer loud and mocking, now filled with concern and shock. They held each other's arms tightly, their eyes wide with fear. "Hey, whoa, what is happening?" they whispered to each other, looking around as if something evil was lurking in the compound.
But the news was not finished. By Monday morning, there was another commotion. The sound of an ambulance siren filled the compound. Wee-oh, wee-oh, wee-oh. Patience's husband had a stroke. Just like that, the man who was drinking and laughing on Saturday was now being carried out on a stretcher, his mouth twisted to one side, one hand dangling uselessly, his eyes rolling in his head. Patience was running behind the ambulance in her nightgown, her wrapper falling off, screaming, "Namio, my husband, wait for me!" She stumbled and fell, got up and continued running, her slippers flying off her feet. The doctor said it was serious, so they said it would take months of treatment, and even then, he might never fully recover. His 3 bosses, he had to start selling them to pay for medical bills. "What kind of thing is this?" the women cried, gathering in a kite circle, holding each other. But still, more was coming. Tuesday afternoon, the whole compound heard a loud crash. Bam! Then shouting, then Blessing's high-pitched scream that made dogs bark throughout the neighborhood. Her contractor husband had been caught red-handed in a hotel with a young girl, but this time, the girl's father was a military man who did not play. The man beat Blessing's husband until his own mother would not recognize him. They dragged him out of the hotel room, threw him down the stairs, pop, 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 and beat him in the parking lot while people recorded with their phones. He beat him so well that the man had to be admitted to the hospital with broken ribs and a swollen face that looked like overripe udara. Blessing collapsed at the hospital entrance when she saw her husband's face, her legs giving way beneath her like a felled tree. The scandal spread through the village like wildfire. No one wanted to give him contracts anymore. By Wednesday, the compound was in complete chaos. Amarachi's scream at dawn woke up every single person. "Where is my husband? Where is he? Somebody tell me where he is." She ran from house to house in her nightgown, banging on doors with both fists, her hair standing on end, her eyes wild. Her husband had run away, just disappeared like Houdini. He left a note on the table that she kept waving in the air as she ran around. "He's gone! He left me! Chai!" She threw herself against the compound wall, slid down to the ground, and started pulling at her own hair with both hands.
Thursday brought more wahala. A man on a motorcycle came to deliver a letter to Ifeoma. She tore it open right there in the compound, her hands trembling. As she read, the letter fell from her hands and floated to the ground like a cursed leaf. "Transfer letter. They are sending my husband to a village so remote that even Satan himself has never visited there. He has to go immediately." She grabbed the messenger by his shirt, shaking him violently. "Tell them no. Tell them he cannot go." But the man pulled away from her and drove off quickly. Ifeoma sank to the ground, picked up the letter, tore it into tiny pieces and threw them in the air like confetti, screaming at the sky. Friday was Adaeze's turn. Her husband came home early from work, walked straight past her like a zombie, and sat down on the veranda staring at nothing. Adaeze followed him, calling, "Nai, what is it? Talk to me." He just kept staring, his mouth moving but no sound coming out. His business partner had run away with all their money, every single kobo. The man woke up that morning to find his business account completely empty. When the reality finally hit him, he started laughing. That kind of crazy laughter that is more frightening than crying. 10 years! 10 years of work gone! Adaeze grabbed him and shook him hard. "Stop laughing! Please stop!" But he couldn't stop. Neighbors came running and had to hold both of them as they broke down together. And Saturday, exactly 1 week after they had mocked Chioma so mercilessly, Nkechi's husband drove into the compound with another woman sitting in the front seat. The woman was young, heavily pregnant, and wearing a wedding ring. Nkechi came out of her house smiling, thinking her husband had brought a visitor. But then he said it, standing right there in front of everyone, his arm around the other woman's waist. "Nkechi, meet my second wife. We got married last month in her village. You can stay or leave. I don't care anymore." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Nkechi's smile froze on her face. Her legs started shaking. She opened her mouth but no sound came out. Then suddenly, she let out a scream that made birds fly out of trees. "Hey!" Her eyes rolled back in her head and she collapsed like a bag of cement. Brush! Right there in the compound. People rushed to her from all sides, fanning her, throwing water on her face, slapping her cheeks gently. Nkechi, wake up! My people, you need to see that compound now. Where once there was laughter and mockery, now there was only crying and wailing. The 7 women who used to sit under that mango tree drinking wine and tearing other people apart were now scattered, each one dealing with her own personal disaster that had arrived without warning. The mango tree stood alone, the chairs empty, the wine glasses abandoned and covered in dust. And Chioma? Her husband got the job at the district office. His salary increased by 4 times what he was earning before. They moved to a better apartment in the same compound. Yes, so they didn't run away, they stayed right there. The day they moved to the bigger apartment, Chioma walked through the compound in a brand new Ankara wrapper, her head held high, but her spirit still humble. When the 7 women saw her, they quickly turned their faces away, some covering their eyes with their wrappers, others suddenly finding something very interesting to look at on the ground. One evening, about 2 weeks after all the disasters, Ngozi approached Chioma. The woman looked like a different person. Her hair was no longer styled nicely, her expensive clothes were replaced with simple wrappers, her face was drawn and tired. She walked slowly towards Chioma's veranda, wringing her hands nervously, biting her lower lip. When she reached Chioma, she fell to her knees right there on the ground, bam! Her whole body was shaking.
"Chioma," Ngozi said, tears streaming down her face, her voice breaking with every word. "Chioma, I know what we did to you was wrong. We mocked you, we laughed at you, we treated you like you were beneath us." She covered her face with both hands and sobbed loudly, her shoulders heaving up and down. "We were wicked, and I am sorry. Please, can you find it in your heart to forgive me?" She grabbed the edge of Chioma's wrapper with both hands, holding it like a lifeline. Chioma looked down at her for a long moment. Then she bent down, placed her hands on Ngozi's shoulders gently, and lifted her up to her feet. "Chioma, I forgave you people the same day you were mocking me. I don't have time to carry bitterness in my heart, though. But you see, the problem was not me. The problem was that you people forgot that nobody knows tomorrow. You were so busy looking down on others that you didn't see that your own foundation was shaking." One by one, all 7 women came to apologize. Some crawled on their knees, some prostrated flat on the ground, some just stood there with tears running down their faces silently. And Chioma, because she had a good heart, she helped them. She prayed with them, holding their hands and raising them to heaven. She shared her small wisdom with them, sitting with each one and listening to their troubles. She even helped Ngozi to find a good lawyer for her husband at a cheaper rate, making phone calls and following up personally. But you see, even though things eventually got better for some of them, Ngozi's husband was later released. Patience's husband recovered small and could walk with a cane. Blessing's husband got some work again after he repented publicly and begged the whole village for forgiveness. Their lives were never the same. The pride that had puffed them up like akara had been beaten out of them flat. They had learnt the hard way that pride comes before a fall, and that when you mock someone who is managing their life with dignity, you are inviting trouble to your own doorstep. The compound became a different place after that year. The mango tree where they used to sit and gossip, nobody sat there anymore. The chairs and table were removed and the space became quiet, like a monument to their foolishness. When the women gathered now, it was to pray together under Chioma's veranda, holding hands in a circle, their voices raised in songs of thanksgiving and repentance. They encouraged each other, wiped each other's tears, shared words of wisdom instead of words of destruction. And whenever a new person moved into the compound and tried to start gossip or mockery, the 7 women who had learnt their lesson would quickly shut it down, waving their hands frantically and shaking their heads. We don't do that here, oh. You never know whose head God is watching over.
As for Chioma and Emeka, they continued to prosper quietly. Emeka got promoted again 2 years later and bought a car. Nothing fancy, just a small Corolla, but it was theirs. They had 3 beautiful children who played in the compound with the other children, treating everyone with the same respect their mother had taught them. But despite all their progress, Chioma never forgot where they came from. She never looked down on anyone. She never mocked anyone's hustle. She would still sit on her veranda in the evenings, but now instead of mending old clothes, she was teaching young wives in the compound how to manage their homes, how to respect their husbands, how to build their marriages with wisdom instead of with their mouths.
Thank you for watching till the end. See you in our next episode. Bye.